We are going to talk about a number of things. The purpose of the Couchbase Mobile 101 is to explain the mobile architecture and our sort of strategy and how it sort of differs from sort of traditional development with mobile. Talk about the sync gateway, talk about Couchbase Lite, our integrations, also show you CouchbaseCloud, our sandbox alpha service for getting up and running with Couchbase Mobile and building, applications, to become familiar with Couchbase Mobile. And also talk about sort of the key areas and concepts that you'll need to understand that are sort of new, different, and awesome about Couchbase Mobile. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is the architecture of Couchbase Mobile. And we have a JSON anywhere approach, and so we have the Couchbase server in the cloud, and that can be also on-premise or in the cloud, in a data center. Of course, when I say cloud, I mean all of the above. And then we've got also Couchbase Lite on the mobile device, and that's the first and only NoSQL database running on the device itself. So we support, Apple, iOS, we support Android, and then we have this sort of magical thing in the middle, Couchbase Sync Gateway, which also is running in front of Couchbase Server, and that does the sort of magic of automatically synchronizing your data between Couchbase Server and your Couchbase Lite local databases. What's really awesome about this is, this automated sync. Traditionally, sync code has been a very difficult thing to write, a very difficult code to manage and write and get right on local devices as well as on the server. And we've taken a lot of that sort of complexity out of the equation by creating this Sync Gateway. So Sync Gateway is a program that runs in front of Couchbase Server that is handling all that synchronization for you, as well as the Couchbase Lite also has, synchronization with the Sync Gateway built in, so it actually handles all the synchronization with Sync Gateway, and you don't, as a developer, don't actually have to worry about all the connectivity, maintenance, etc. With the Sync Gateway. It is taken care of for you in sort of a whole package. So traditional mobile apps basically, connect through HTTP REST services to your application servers, and that can be connected, of course, to Couchbase or any other database that you happen to be using. Of course, we feel the Couchbase is, we're very big in the mobile space with all the major gaming companies, etc., because of our speed and flexibility and schema. So traditional mobile development, you're basically, creating HTTP services within the device to connect to, REST services, and along that you're transferring JSON, to the REST services, retrieving JSON back from REST services. But you also, have a different type of storage on those devices, and that is, generally more relational style. So you're always constructing and deconstructing JSON. Very similar to web apps, converting JSON into a schema'd local database. And so our approach is actually to have JSON anywhere and actually also have JSON on the device itself to make this, sort of a fluid, JSON anywhere approach where we have JSON on the device, you have JSON on the wire, and you've on the application server, and then between Couchbase and the application server as well. So with this complex sync code, when you're doing these REST services, this is actually quite difficult, and what most people do is just avoid the problem altogether. So they don't write sync code, or they make it so minimal that they don't actually have to worry about it. Instead, they just retrieve much more data, have heavier calls, to the REST services to retrieve more data, and generally it's difficult and slow. So this is kind of where the state of things have been for many years that led to our service. And then there's another option that people find popular is like the mobile DB as a service, things like Parse or StackMob or There's other services coming up where they kind of take care of it for you. You don't know what's going on in terms of the storage, behind the scenes. All you know is the REST services, and while it's very convenient at first, it actually becomes quite difficult later when you scale. It can be very expensive actually. So what starts out as being really cheap is actually quite expensive, and most applications will graduate from this DB as a service and then have to figure out all the things that they have to replicate the DB as a service that make things exactly the same as they were with the DB as a service, basically replicating that service on their own when they have to scale. So that's actually really complicated later in the game, while it seems really easy up front. So in this case, we also still have JSON, on the wire. But then again, we still have that relational database style local storage, with SQLite or whatever, or Core Data SQLite, within devices. So again, you have to deal with this sort of complex sync code, and in this situation, you don't have control on the application server side, because you're now just using a DB as a service. So all it is data storage. So then you don't have the ability to kind of control both ends of the equation, with your mobile app and the application server. Now you only have the mobile app that has to kind of deal with all that logic, and that becomes even more complex locally within the app. So that increases, it just basically moves complexity around. Now it's all going to be in the local device, and you don't have the advantage of the traditional apps of being able to also have control on the application server to make decisions and logic. So with our JSON Anywhere approach, what we're doing is kind of taking a lot of those complexities out and solving a lot of those problems by having JSON in all three places, basically. So we have JSON, on the sync gateway between Couchbase server. Couchbase server itself can store JSON, and we have JSON on the wire between devices and the sync gateway, and we also have JSON locally on the device itself. And so this JSON Anywhere approach actually simplifies things quite a bit for developers, and because we have this sort of automated synchronization, when the device is offline, it knows that it's offline. It can handle, you can still work with the local database. And then when it reconnects, when you get to your, metro station and get to the surface and you've got your internet connection back on, it'll automatically kind of sync your changes, and also deal with conflict, conflict resolution as well. So, this is a very powerful approach. It's not actually limited to just, iPhones, iPads, and Nexus tablets, etc. It's actually also useful for, remote databases on sensors, all kinds of different applications that are not limited to just your, kind of popular consumer electronics. There's all kinds of uses for this all over the place. Farm equipment will have sensors and sensor data, and then literally you can walk around with a Wi-Fi connection and collect all that sensor data, or you can have a system for that. So this is not just limited. Couchbase Lite is not limited to just these mobile devices, but it's actually a much bigger vision of being able to collect data remotely, and have local data that you can work with at the same time. So let's talk a little bit more about Couchbase Lite. Couchbase Lite is the first and only native NoSQL database for mobile. We currently support, the iOS and Android platforms. We do have partnerships as well to work with, non-native. These are native databases, but we also have non-native implementations, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So this is an ultra lightweight, it's a secure JSON database. You're working with JSON locally on your device, so it's your own little Couchbase database on the device. We have native support for iOS and Android. We have the conflict resolution, we have automated sync, and all those things are kind of bundled in the Couchbase Lite. You can still work with it without the sync gateway. If you just want JSON storage locally, you can of course just work with it as a database on your mobile device. So that's one of the beauties of Couchbase Lite, is that it can be connected or not connected, and you can use it either way. For people like myself who've grown accustomed to using JSON pretty much all over the place, this was really cool to be able to use JSON on the mobile platform as well. So basically, you're using JSON in your mobile app tier. You're always working with local data on the device because the synchronization is happening in the background and handled by Couchbase Lite itself. You're pretty much always just working with your local data. Your local data is going to be synced back and forth. You're going to get new data, coming from the sync gateway all the time, but you're still kind of working with local data on the device. About with Couchbase Server itself, you're getting that sort of flexibility and power of flexible schema on the device, which is great. When it's connected, when you're creating new data or changing documents, they will sync automatically. And when you're not connected, you're still working with your your local Couchbase Lite database. In both cases, whether you're connected to the internet or not, you're working with the local database, and all that complexity of synchronization is happening when connectivity returns, when you get your signal back, etc. When that connectivity returns, it handles that synchronization and conflict resolution for you. So we do have very powerful conflict resolution features. Well, that's almost a webinar in itself, which we will plan to do in the more advanced Couchbase Mobile 102. We're going to talk about that. The conflict resolution features and how that works and how you can kind of customize it to your needs as well. We also have integrations with our partners. We've got partners with PhoneGap and Accelerator and Xamarin. So we now have sort of plugins for each of these platforms to be able to use Couchbase Lite within these projects, and it's very simple to do. We do have a sample projects. We do have a sample projects for PhoneGap, and I know that a Accelerator Titanium project is in the works, and I believe also the Xamarin one's in the works. So you have to kind of keep an eye out on our mobile.couchbase.com page to see when those kind of come up, those demo apps for those systems. So these partner integrations are awesome because it really opens up all these services are ways to open up mobile development to all different kinds of developers who don't have experience with native development and want to still develop applications using HTML5 and JavaScript, etc., and be semi-native. So PhoneGap, we announced this sort of plugin about I think a month and a half ago. So you can very simply add the plugin and work with a Couchbase Lite instance, and when you do your build, you can either do a local or remote build. It'll incorporate the Couchbase Lite into your application. If you've never used PhoneGap before, I mean, we do have a demo project, the Couchbase Labs, GitHub Couchbase Labs, Couchbase Lite PhoneGap demo there, and then there's the links to the actual plugin as well. You do have to create an account if you want to do remote building on multiple platforms. PhoneGap's really powerful, and all these systems are really powerful because you can have one code base and develop for multiple platforms. And so if you want to build on multiple platforms, you can either do it locally or through build.phonegap.com. And of course, we have a Xamarin integration as well. It's available in the Developer Center already. I think that the PhoneGap plugin, as far as on the build.phonegap.com on the Adobe site, it's not in the library yet, but you basically do PhoneGap plugin install from the command line, and you can install it. And for Xamarin, it is available in the Developer Center, and it also includes a sample application there, to get started. And then, of course, Titanium also is there. It's now on the marketplace as well. For Couchbase Lite is on there as well. And I do believe that we're working on a sample application using Titanium right now as we speak. So we talked about Couchbase Lite. So there's Couchbase Lite, there's Sync Gateway, and there's Couchbase Server, and the three combined is the complete mobile solution. So we talked a bit about Couchbase Lite, and you're basically working through a local database using the Couchbase Lite API. And now let's talk about the Sync Gateway, because this is kind of where all the magic happens with the mobile solution. So what is the Sync Gateway? The Sync Gateway is a program. It's a server-side program that sits in front of Couchbase Server to manage sync and sync administration. So it also can be run on multiple servers. It's called a shared nothing architecture. So you can, as you scale up your Couchbase cluster, you can also scale up your Sync Gateways. You can run them on the same machine as Couchbase, or you can run them on separate machines and point them to Couchbase. So you can scale them because of the shared nothing architecture. Each sync gateway, you can basically add as many sync gateways as you want and sort of load balance your syncing between them. So you can sort of scale that up that way. User authentication, channel configuration, user roles, and basic info. And then, of course, you can enable and disable users. You need this authentication scheme in order to be able to give access to synchronization channels. And we're going to talk about what the sync channels are so you can understand that concept. That's a very important concept to understand. So this is kind of what we're looking at here. We've got devices, using the Sync REST API. Then the Sync Gateway has a bunch of internal components, and then it also has a Couchbase Smart Client, which is writing data to and from Couchbase itself. And these subcomponents are the important magic of the Sync Gateway. So as far as your application a mobile application is concerned, the Sync REST API is actually being handled by Couchbase Lite itself, but it is interacting through the Sync REST API. And then also on the other end, the Couchbase Smart Client, it's also the Sync Gateway is handling those connection and that data transfer between Couchbase and the Sync Gateway as well. So all on both ends are completely managed, as well as the Sync Gateway subcomponents. This entire spectrum is completely managed, so it's automated. That's the beauty of this sort of solution, is that all this complexity is sort of built for you. So the subcomponents of Sync Gateway, we have an authentication. We have the most important part, the sync function. This is the thing I'm going to spend a bit of time on so everyone understands the sync function. We have channel change tracking. We have a conflict management and revisions. And of course, we have the inputs and outputs of the Sync REST API and the Couchbase Smart Client. So let's talk a bit about the sync function. The sync function is a JavaScript function. It is a part of the sort of configuration of Sync Gateway. You're providing it this sync function, and in this sync function, you're basically doing a whole number of things. So there are two parameters here in the sync function. So JSON documents that are going to be saved are that first parameter. So it passes the JSON document that you're saving. So you created a document on a mobile device. It gets transferred up to the Sync Gateway by Couchbase Lite, and then it goes to this sync function. And based on the key of the document, it'll also pull the previous revision of that document as well. So the two parameters here are the current document you're saving and the previous revision of that document as well. If you need to do some comparisons between the two in terms of authenticating this request and make sure that this user can continue modifying this document, you can also look at old channels it's been associated with, etc. There's a lot of things you can do with this. So we're getting the new document you're saving and the previous revision, if there is one, will also be passed to the sync function. So the sync function is defined in the Sync Gateway launch configuration. You can do that in an actual JSON file on the hard drive, or you can do it on the command line when you launch Sync Gateway. The sync function processes documents and what we call sync function calls. And what the general purpose of the sync function is to create associations between documents, channels, users, and roles. So our sync function calls are channel with the parameter within the parameter for that is, all the channels that this document will be associated with. Access, which will grant access to channels for users and roles. Role will associate users with roles, and then we have validation with throw, and then we have a type and a message, and that'll basically do validation on that document. And if you want to ensure that certain conditions are met, if you do a throw command, it'll basically throw out that document and won't save it. As a form of validation, it will not allow any modifications to sync gateway or the channel's access or roles because it didn't meet some validation criteria. So the the first one I want to talk about is channel. And the channel command within the sync function will associate this JSON document with a channel or multiple channels. So channel names are just strings like food or chat 12939 or anything. They're just strings, and you can associate within the channel parameter that you're passing. You can just have a single string or an array of strings, and it'll associate that document with the multiple channels if you have an array of strings. It'll also overwrite any previous association. So if you're resaving, excuse me, if you're resaving the same document and you're changing the channels that it's on, because you have a new list of channels here, it'll basically change it from that revision going forward will be in the new channels and not the old channels if you change those names. So these channels are actually coming from the document itself. So when it's saved, you're also including the channels that that document belongs to, and then it goes to the sync function. The sync function will get to this statement of channel and associate this with those channels. And if it's already associated with it, it doesn't modify anything. And from then on, any users that are associated with that channel will receive those documents in synchronization. So like if I'm going to show it's kind of a diagram here. So, this command associates this document with one or more channels. So channels are basically what organize which JSON documents are synchronized down to which users. So users are associated with channels, or users are associated with roles, and roles are associated with channels if you want to do entire groups of users. Channels are defined, as JSON strings or an array of strings, and they're within the JSON document. So let's kind of show a little diagram of this. So, user A is associated, it has been associated through, let's just say, a previous document that it saved, that was saved. It's associated with the food channels. User B is associated with sports channels, and user C is associated with food and travel channels. So these are associations we've created through we're going to talk about the access method, which associates users with channels. So when this new document at the top here is saved, and its doc.channels is food, it's going to go to be synchronized down so let's just say user D is creating all these documents just for the sake of understanding where this document came from. User D is sort of an author of content, and users A, B, and C are consumers of content. So user D created this JSON document, and this content has the doc.channels of food, so it's going to be synchronized down to user A and user C's devices. And then the next document that user D creates, as the author of content, is actually about food and sports, and that actually will end up going down to all three channels. I'm sorry, all three users, because those channels are each one of them actually has one of those two channels. So this document is actually showing up in two different channels. And then this third document that user D creates is associated with sports and travel. And so those errors are wrong. It should go to user B and user C there. I'll have to fix that. Users B and C are associated with sports and travel, and so that document will be synchronized to user B and C. um, so channels are a way of organizing, synchronization of documents. You can also say have a chat channel between two users, and they're both associated with those with those two users together, and so they're both in that channel. So when they each create documents that are their next chat message, they'll get synchronized down between the two users. So user A and B, let's say we create a chat channel called chat123, and we associate them both with the chat because they both clicked a button and said I want to chat with the so and so person. We created a chat channel, and then every time they type in a message, it's going to be associated with that chat channel, so it'll get synchronized up to the server and synchronized back down because they're both associated with that chat channel. So access is the next function we're going to talk about, and access is a way to grant access to channels. So the channels are a primary way of defining, where synchronization happens and which users get which documents, and access is our way of associating users with channels, and also associating roles with channels. So in this this function call, and in the sync function, you only have one sync function, so you're going to have all these calls in a single sync function. But I'm describing them and displaying them individually just so you can understand them each one at a time. But within a sync function, you're going to have channel calls, you're going to have access calls, you're going to have role calls, and you're going to have so you're going to have logic and throw calls for validation. You're going to have that all within a single sync function. I don't want you to get confused because I'm displaying them one at a time, but this is just so you understand each one. So the access call is basically associating users with channels or roles with channels, or both. So this doc.friends parameter, this first parameter, that's basically a list of users or roles, and roles basically look like role, the word role colon, and the role name. So it can be a list, it can be an array of users, it can be an array of users and roles together. Each parameter can have either a single string or a list or an array of strings for either one. So it's kind of one-to-one or many-to-many, depending on whether you have a single string or multiple in an array. So that first parameter is the users, and the second is the channels that those users and or roles will be associated with, and that's what the access function does. And so this is used to kind of grant access to channels, and this is sort of a union. So you're going to have multiple documents that come in that do this access, and at different times the same user is going to be associated with maybe a new channel in this document or another channel in another document. And so it's basically their channels is a union of all of them. And through the REST API, you can actually look at all the channels they're associated with. Now, channels themselves, which I didn't mention, are just strings, and they can be created at any time. So even with no access for the users, I mean, they're basically just strings. So you can create a new channel dynamically at any time, even if there's no access given to any users to that channel. It may be given at a later time. So channels are sort of dynamic in that sense that you don't have to define them in advance. You can define them on the fly as just strings. So this is what the access command does. And then the role is basically associating users with one or more roles. Now roles actually, if you define them only in the sync function, they don't they'll be saved, but they don't actually exist until roles are sort of a special case where you actually have to use our REST API interface to define actual roles. then this is unique and a little bit different than channels in that you actually have to define them through the API. Now, if you did associate users with roles, using this, so you're granting users access to a role, you're associating a user with roles. If you create that role at a later point, actually through the API, all these will actually still be valid and basically be enabled. The role will be enabled once you create it in the REST API. So it will, pick up any previously created associations, but you do need to use the REST interface to define roles. But within the sync function, this role will associate users, user or users, again, strings or array of strings, with one or more roles, again, string or array of strings. And so roles, like I said, look like the word role, colon, and, text after it. So you can substitute them in, as, like users, just by typing in role, colon, and the role name in that array list of strings. So the role function is basically a way to give entire groups of users that have been associated with a role access to a channel. But the role command itself is to associate, users with a role. And then finally, there's the throw function. The throw function, oh, we've got an error here in the slide. Let me fix that real quick. Somehow I probably hit undo on something. Control Z, type, and message. You can watch me fix this live. And this is for validation. I don't know how this happened. Validation of user document data and associations. Validation of authentication. When this command validates or invalidates this document. All right, check that out. Let me the slide in front of you. So the throw function, this is better. The throw function invalidates this document. So when this document's being saved, you probably, most likely you're going to have an if condition before you actually do this throw. There's two types. There's unauthorized and forbidden that you put in there in that sort of, JSON hash, and then the message. So there's a few different types that you can use, and they kind of correspond to like 401s and 403s. And when there's a throw that gets called, it invalidates this document, meaning no other functions, sync calls within this sync function will be retained. So it basically invalidates this entire process for this document. So if a user has access and then been, hasn't authenticated, for instance, then you can, detect that it hasn't been authenticated and do a throw. So basically, if someone is like rooted their Android phone, for instance, is trying to modify documents, this is a way to say, oh, well, this user hasn't been authenticated, so we can't, actually take these modifications. So those documents will not be saved, and also any access or channel associations will also not be saved if a throw command is called within this sync function. So, channels is a great way for people to collaborate. You can specify, channels that, users, like a few users may, or, a pair or few or many users belong to, and then only that data within that channel will go to each of these devices. So you can imagine sort of a chat scenario where 2 or 3 users are associated with, a particular chat channel, and then so as they type in new messages, which are documents that are associated with that channel, it'll go to all the users automatically when they're connected to the internet, and when they're not connected, you can still type, and then, when they do connect, it'll actually synchronize, and you'll get, other people's messages, and they'll get yours. It's a way to reduce the amount of, channels are a way of reducing the amount of data that gets replicated down to the devices. It actually gives you a way of controlling, what data gets replicated to each user. It reduces the amount of data that is replicated. It's just basically a strategy that helps, reduce your bandwidth usage and traffic between, servers and your mobile device. And it's a very powerful way to kind of isolate data, for different functions. And you can also, you know, use it because in a way that is very creative. So you can actually use it as a way to dynamically assign, users with, different channels and change channels, etc. So it's a very powerful feature, channels, which is very difficult to implement in a traditional REST system. And very much easier to develop here. And of course, we can also do authentication with right now it's Facebook and Persona. We have a almost practically automated way of doing the authentication with Facebook and Persona, and I'll kind of show that um, and in a demo. And so this is basically the primary concepts of Couchbase Mobile. Understand Couchbase Lite and how it fits in, the automatic syncing. The sync function and the sync gateway is probably the most important concept to understand because it is helping you decide sort of this channel structure, the access and the roles, and all those associations together. And then of course, that gets pointed to a Couchbase server, and that's all handled for you. The sync gateway handles all that sort of communication to Couchbase server, on its own without you having to figure out the right scenario or how to do that exactly. So I'm going to actually kind of show a bunch of things now. One of the first things I want to show here is here's the community page. You can go to mobile.couchbase.com and it redirects you to this page, which is sort of the mobile solution. This is where you can download Couchbase Lite for, the PhoneGap plugin, the Android and iOS. And then the documentation for Couchbase Lite is down here as well. This is sort of important to get started as we are sort of in the developer preview 2 and close to a beta level. It's kind of one of those things that as you get kind of develop, we're also developing new features and expanding features and improving things. So checking out the documentation will help you kind of with this concepts of the Mobile 101 will help you understand sort of the documentation and what you're doing. We also have the Couchbase Cloud. This is sort of a sandbox service. It's not generally intended for production use. It's not intended to be sort of a scalable platform at this time. It's really just a convenience, free convenience service where we have already kind of you can provision, a sync gateway, and we take care of the sync gateway allocation and the Couchbase server and the back end behind the sync gateway. So like all you basically put your sync function in here, provide a name, and there you've got a new one, to-do list, and that this is my sync function right now. I can do access. I'll just make one access doc dot shared with. So I'll these are the channels and the shared with that I'm gonna this is basically my sync function. So I create that, and now I've got a to-do list, and we've got the URLs that you need to sync to, and the administration REST interface, etc. So this is a really easy to use, sort of get started with Couchbase Mobile. So CouchbaseCloud.com. Then our docs are, in docs.couchbase.com. Under mobile, you can really kind of dig into the concepts. We talk about it a little bit more. And then we have our demo projects at Couchbase Labs. We've got the To-Do app, To-Do Lite iOS, which I'm going to actually show you right now. I'm going to build it, and it's actually a shared list to-do. It's like a simple to-do app where you can create lists and tasks and kind of check them off. So let's put that. Let's build that. So basically, what I did was I already cloned it on my hard drive here. I downloaded Couchbase Lite, and when you actually drag the Couchbase Lite framework into the Xcode project. So in this case, let me get to that folder. So I did get confused in the instructions myself because I've been a web developer for like 15 years, but mobile is relatively new to me. So um, I have this. I thought that I actually copied it from the terminal, but there's actually some magic that happens when you drag the framework over into frameworks here. When you drag it over, Xcode does some little magic there for you, to associate the framework with the build, so it knows that you're including it in the build. Otherwise, you're going to find some missing headers and stuff like that. So I'm going to build this for iPhone. And this has the Facebook authentication enabled. So let's do a login. Oh, wait. Hold on one sec. I actually do have to do a git pull on this. I forgot he fixed the bug. All right. All right, let's rebuild this. All right, let's stop that. Go back and rebuild it. And let's make sure, because I'm on the simulator, let's make sure I actually got my Facebook set up here. Yep. All right. So let's do a login. And oh, there it is. My internet was being slow because I'm actually broadcasting the GoToMeeting at the same time. There we go. So I actually have a few lists. So this got synced down. Actually, I'm glad that it took a while because this actually got synced down from CouchbaseCloud.com, where actually everybody who's running this is actually sharing the same Couchbase Cloud, which is actually it's in the project under the app delegate. We have these URLs. We're sharing the same Facebook app ID, and we're sharing the same Couchbase Cloud sync gateway. So all of us are actually, using the same sort of list here, which is kind of funny. So let's do Mobile 101. We're creating a new list here. And then, this means that everybody else that is shared on this list is gonna actually see all this stuff. So throw validation. Hey, you can actually provide feedback. If you install this app, you can provide feedback on Couchbase Mobile 101 using this. So when I want to share, these are actually all the people that have sort of installed and run this To-Do Lite app on iOS and signed in with Facebook. So these are all the people. So if I want to share this with, J. Chris, where's J. Chris? It's probably just Chris here. Yeah, I'm going to share it with Chris Anderson. So now that list is now going to be shared with him. And basically what I've done is with that list, I've modified the channel to include, well, it has a channel. Basically, I've added access to Chris Anderson by including it in the list document. And so on the sync gateway side, it's going to see this modification of the M101 list, and that I've added another user to my users who can see this list in my JSON, and the sync gateway is now kind of added him in, and basically I have to talk to him about, you know, hey, did you see my list? Because I can't log in as him. Excuse me. So basically, this list document, you know, has the sort of the people that can see this list, and I just granted access to Chris Anderson. By modifying this JSON document locally, it gets synchronized up to Sync Gateway. Sync Gateway sees that I've added, you know, it looks at the access list within my JSON and said, oh, there's, you know, people here that should be associated with this list, and then it changes that association. Now, when Chris Anderson loads up his app and you know is logged in and authenticated, it's going to sync that down because he is now associated with that channel as well. So he's going to see this list as well. So now we're going to actually finish up the Mobile 101 with questions, and I hope I've covered sort of enough material for you to understand the overall concepts involved in the mobile solution and be able to understand sort of our documentation as the documentation grows and improves, etc., and be able to kind of build our demo project.
Thank you, Jasdeep. Initial introduction is Mobile 101. We are planning to have Mobile 102, 103, and 104 starting in January. So we have a few questions, and we have about 10 minutes left to answer them. So I will start with one from Rohit. Can you have custom authentication other than Facebook and Persona, and how can you set them up?
Yes, and actually you can, and I think we're working on a LinkedIn one right now, and if you look at the documentation guide, sorry, where's that tab? Yeah, the documentation for administration. So authenticating users here under administering sync gateway, authorizing authenticating users. There's Persona and Facebook, and then we also talk about, you know, sort of custom authentication here. And I do kind of think that this was sort of planned for the Couchbase Mobile 102, where we kind of talk through all the authentication schemes. You can always ask for help. Let me actually put a slide for. We do have a Google group for mobile, and we're very active on it. We're also active on IRC. Let me actually put a slide up for the resources. Let me go back there and create a new slide here for all the resources. So there's our docs, and there's this is important, the Couchbase. If you Couchbase mobile Google group, very active on it, and I can get the URL. And then also, if you're a user of IRC, the Couchbase mobile on Freenode is there for IRC channel. So these are two places to get help from our developers that, you know, actually built the Couchbase mobile solution. Let me get the URL for this as well.
And if you have any specific question, you can always email justdeep@couchbase.com or webinar@couchbase.com, and we can forward those questions to our mobile group.
Yeah, if I can answer them.
Yeah, it's pretty good in following up with those. So we have another question that is, I think, interesting for everyone. So can you define a broadcast channel that syncs to all users? Jasdeep, do you hear me?
No, I actually lost you for the question. Can you do it again?
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Can you define a broadcast channel that syncs to all users?
Yes, of course. Yes, we have a star channel, which is kind of like a public channel that you can broadcast to everyone. Yes.
Perfect. And then we have a question from Bo. So It was from the beginning of the presentation. So from a research perspective, what do you mean that Sync Gateway sits in front of Couchbase? Is Sync Gateway a component or piece of code running on the box where Couch database sits, or it needs to be on a different hardware or box?
Yeah, it is a program. Yes, it's a program with a bunch of different components within it. It is actually like it's like an app server code, except it's prepackaged to work as a sync gateway. So it's an actual program, and it can run like on the actual Couchbase server box. You know, but as you scale up, you're probably going to want it on its own boxes. But then it's a shared nothing architecture, so you can have many different sync gateways running on many different boxes, all pointing to a scaled up Couchbase server cluster. It is a program. It's like an app server that's already pre-built for you for Couchbase Mobile.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Another question is, so how do the channels work in case of anonymous users? For example, can I subscribe the device to a specific channel? If I have an application that delivers contents on multiple topics and a user decides to download only one of those topics, but user is anonymous, is the authorization based on the device or the user?
Wait, can you repeat that question again? It was long.
Yeah, it is very long. So it's basically how the channels and authorization work in case of anonymous users. Are those based on the device? So can I subscribe the device to a specific channel, or is based on the authentication of the user?
Oh, I see. How do channels and basically anonymous users work? How do you associate channels with anonymous users?
Yeah.
That's actually a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that one. I'll have to actually figure that one out. I don't know, but I'll put it in the follow-up blog post. I'll give you that. We're gonna have a follow-up blog post where I answer all the questions as well. I'll put that in there because I actually don't know the answer to that. That's a good question though. I haven't even thought about association of channels with anonymous. So great question.
Perfect. And so are the filters the right way to filter out data for specific users?
Well, that's kind of what channels are doing. Channels are acting like filters. So if you're asking like within a channel, can I also filter on the filter? So channels are a filter. So you're deciding what data gets synchronized down to which users based on that, property, the channels, and the association of the user with the channels. That is acting like a filter already. As a further filter down, I mean, you could within your application logic, because you're writing sort of code to interact with your local Couchbase Lite, you could have other additional properties which do some filtering, but every document within the channel that the user is associated with is still going to go down to the device. So you wouldn't be filtering, you wouldn't be able to double filter basically because you already have a filter. You wouldn't be able to double filter between Sync Gateway and Couchbase Lite, but within the your own application, within the channel data that you retrieve, you can filter on that based on your own logic with your sort of view query on your local Couchbase Lite in your app. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Steve. So we have a few questions about the pricing model of Couchbase Lite and if it will be available just as a community edition or also enterprise. And I want to remind everyone we are an open source company, but so the software is always available for the community. But Couchbase Lite is still in beta, so you can download it, but it's not ready for production yet. But we will announce very soon the date of the release as a GA release. Which is coming up quite soon. So stay tuned for the announcement on when the product is going to be available. But in the meantime, please download Couchbase Lite, download the Sync Gateway, and so you can provide us feedback and you can see if it's what you need for your application. So one question about JSON and security. So is the JSON encrypted on the device, and how secure is it?
Uh, Actually, I don't know. I don't think that it is within Couchbase Lite encrypted on the device. So, I mean, I don't know how to answer how secure it is. I mean, it really depends on, can devices be hacked really easily? So on Android, I guess that's more of a concern because Android devices, I guess, are easier to hack than hacking an iOS device. But that is a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that one either. I don't believe that it's encrypted. But as far as how secure, I mean, it's going to be the same level of security as any other data within the device. So I will ask about the encryption, whether it's encrypted locally. I don't believe that it is at this time, but it might change for GA because we're still in beta. I don't think we've worried about that concern quite yet, as we're still in sort of development and scaling it up and adding more features, etc. So I think that storage layer within Couchbase Lite may be modified at a future time, to include encryption. But I don't think so at this moment in time during beta.
So I think we have time for one last question, and it's about our integration with partners. If you can go back to the slide at the beginning, can you show again what kind of integration we have? And so if the PhoneGap plugin is available, is now public, and if it can be used with PhoneGap build, and I think it's shown on your slide, what's the availability of PhoneGap plugin?
Yeah, it is available. I mean, I actually did a few days ago. I did the Couchbase Lite PhoneGap sort of demo app, and I ran it on my simulator. There's a few things if you're new to PhoneGap and doing local simulator. You need kind of the PhoneGap sim installed. PhoneGap sim. The iOS sim, you need that, and then within, let's see, iTerm, yes, you can sort of download our PhoneGap project and run it. You can either run it against, Couchbase Cloud, or you can run it locally if you run a local sync gateway in front of Couchbase server on your local machine. It's a little bit more interesting to run it, on Couchbase Cloud, because then it's on the internet and you can kind of travel around and kind of play with it, create data on airplane mode and then come home and, turn off airplane mode and whatever and see all that stuff because it's on the internet. So you're going to need that iOS sim, to do it, and you just basically, let's actually bring up the project Couchbase Labs, PhoneGap. To-do Lite PhoneGap, and the plugin install is just this. Right now, you're doing it through the GitHub, but I believe that it should be very soon where it'll be in the PhoneGap repository. I don't know the exact date of that, but right now you can do it through the GitHub. So, if you go to this Couchbase Labs /to-do Lite-PhoneGap, you can kind of see how to do that plugin install. Build.phonegap.com. Oops. Yeah, right. So I have a few. I have a few apps. I'm new to PhoneGap myself. I've done some native, but I haven't done PhoneGap that much. And you can put in your iOS and Android keys, and it'll kind of build for both. I don't think I had my key unlocked when it was building. Let's look at the plugins. I don't believe it's here yet, but it should be soon. It should be soon. I know that it's coming.
Okay. Thank you, Jasdeep. And this is all the time we have for this session.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already 11, but I want to remind everyone who is interested also in Couchbase Server that we are running this online training, Couchbase 101, 102, and 103, and 104. and 105. So on Monday we'll have Couchbase 103 focused on data modeling, and then Couchbase 104 on Thursday, which will be related to views and indexing. So
Yes.
thank you everyone for attending today. Tomorrow we will send out the email with the follow-up and the video, so you will have it during the weekend if you want to rewatch the session and have the slide available. And thank you, Jasdeep, for the presentation, and I hope to see you all at the next webinar.
All right. Thank you so much.